With the newest edition of Fire in Fortnite Creative, you can actually make infinite burning walls, and it's pretty easy to do. And all you need to create an infinite burning wall is a prop manipulator. And obviously in this item, you have to go in here and change the prop health to invulnerable. If you do that and place the item on a wall that you want to set on fire forever, then you can simply just leave it there and then set the wall on fire and will burn the entire game. One pretty good use case could be for death runs, where you have to jump on a platform which is already on fire, and you can see that I even get the fire damage even though it's invulnerable, and then I have to move on to the next one. So obviously, besides of the pretty cool aesthetically looking effect that you get from this fire, I also think you can use this as a gameplay element quite well. Another pretty cool side effect of the new fire damage in Fortnite Creative is that you can now actually create kind of like rusty looking buildings if you apply fire damage to them. You can see how cool and abandoned this new house looks now. And you can see this is the original one, and this is like the abandoned version which caught on fire or is like left for like, I don't know, years. So you can actually create like new kind of buildings with this fire damage, which is pretty cool. You can see how cool like even these offense building look. You can really go for this abandoned look where like kind of looks like Walking Dead or something, where the buildings stand like for years and years and never has been touched again. So what I recommend doing is that you're going to use the gas pump here and set up like an explosive device in front of the game. And then when the game starts, all of these explode and then turn into these buildings, because obviously we cannot apply fire damage from the beginning. So if you want to create something with fire damage and the fire damage applied from game start, I would highly recommend using the gas pumps for this. Let's move on to one of my favorite items in Fortnite Creative, and that is the Sentry. The Sentry now has basically unlimited options on what you can do with this thing. In my last video where I explained the update, I didn't go over all the cool stuff that you can do with it. But one of the favorite things that I can do with this now is I can make it as big or as small as possible. So one really interesting thing about this is that you can basically only scale it in like every direction equally. If you scale something like this looks pretty cool, and I really want to see how this looks. But if you start the game, you can see that we still have the same sentry and it looks pretty big. So this is not really something new, but since the sentries are now super easy to place in the air, you can use them actually to move around. I used to do this before, but it was super complicated and you had to get the sentry off the plate that it was on. But now you can just basically place them on whatever you want. And the two best ways now to do that is a bouncer and the speed boost pads. I would highly recommend using speed boost pads because they're very versatile and you can basically shoot the sentry in any directions. The bouncers, on the other hand, are a little bit buggy, and you can see sometimes... Okay, we're back. So you can see sometimes if the sentry comes down on the bouncer, it looks a little bit weird. While you don't, yeah, you can see it looks a little bit buggy. On the speed boost, you don't have that problem as much, and obviously you can do basically the same thing on these two. But it's a very cool thing to use these to move these sentries around. Here's a very interesting fact about the new gas pumps. If you grab them and use the fuel on trigger devices, you can see that you can actually activate them. So you can actually use the fuel from the gas pumps to maybe trigger other things. Use it for like some custom things that you create in your map, which I personally think is a really cool touch. And this obviously also applies to the gas pumps cans, which you can also use now in Fortnite Creative. If you do the same thing with fire damage, you can have fire damage also activate this, but only at the first time. So you can see it now burns, but it doesn't really activate after that at all. So if you want to use fire damage to activate triggers multiple times, it doesn't really work that well. But if you want to use a gas pump, it's really cool. So you can use this to water grass, maybe, even though it's a gas can, you know. Maybe we get some new items for this actually. So we can get a water can and stuff like that. So we can actually create really cool custom stuff. So this one is a quick warning, and I saw this because of the prop manipulator being just recently added, so I just thought I'd put this in this video as well. If you put the prop manipulator to invulnerable and put that on any kind of piece that you can add it, so any kind of wood piece or whatever, this obviously works. So if you start the game now, you can see that I can punch on this wall piece and it will not get destroyed. But as soon as I start adding this, it basically loses all its focus and I can just simply destroy it. So if you want to use this in combination, I would highly recommend not use it with anything that is editable. So here's a pretty cool way in how to use the new skydive device to lock players in place so they can play mini games or watch a cinematic without having them to fly over the entire map. So, and here's how it looks in the edited version. You can see that I barely give the players enough room to be in this place here in the skydive device, but I gave them enough room to move from left to right, so they're kind of stuck in place and have to play this mini game and cannot escape. And it's also pretty easy to set up in the device as well. One thing which I recommend do is put the push force to either like the lowest or the highest. That would just do that the player is getting pushed to the lowest end of the device or the highest end. And then also make sure that you have lock effect players in volume so they cannot escape this volume, which is pretty cool to create cinematics or these kind of mini games.